Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am doing the 6W's book tag. This was created by Mason in the Dark. I will link his original video below. Essentially, it is the 6W's: who, what, where, when, why, and how, for some reason, all related to books. So first up, we have who. Who just gets you. This could be an author, character, booktuber, whoever. There is a character that sticks out, one of my favorite characters growing up, and that is Anne Shirley from Anne of Green Gables. And I just feel like we share the same sensibilities. We don't share the same personality, but we share a lot of similar ideas or values, and I just feel like I get Anne, and I feel like she would get me. I would very much be the Diana Barry in that relationship. Number 2 is what. What about your favorite genre interests you the most / makes it your favorite genre? I read quite broadly across genres, so I'm not sure that I have one favorite genre, but if I have to choose, I would go with historical fiction, because I feel like over the last year or maybe year or two, I've been reading quite a lot of historical fiction. So we're going to go with historical fiction for this question. So what about historical fiction interests me or makes it a favorite? In general, not just for historical fiction, but in general, setting is very important to me in a book. The atmosphere and the place really matter to me. When I'm reading a book, I like to feel that the world is lived in, that there's a history there, which is why when I read fantasy, I love fantasy with like a lot of world building. But we're not talking about fantasy right now, we're talking about historical fiction. Historical fiction is very steeped in the setting. I like stories that are slow with a steady build, and I get that from historical fiction. Maybe it's just the historical fictions that I'm choosing, but my experience has been that they have a slower pace, and I get that slow build that I'm looking for. I also like writing with a lot of description. I want to smell and taste and touch the scenery, and I find that historical fiction also usually has that kind of writing. Number 3 is where. Where in time and space is your favorite setting? Speaking of settings, something I love. This is so hard to pick. I like the countryside, like farmland or meadows, rolling hills. I like stories set in like Ireland and Scotland. And I'm not really persnickety about the time period, I guess, but I have read a lot of historical fiction in like the 1800s, so I would say that's probably my comfort zone right now. I also like settings that have kind of like that harsh beauty, like the moors and Wuthering Heights and that kind of thing. Number 4 is when. When a part gets intense, hilarious, or emotional, do you have a strong reaction? If you've got a funny or embarrassing story to go along with that answer, that would be great. I am a crier big time, but mostly with movies. It is much, much harder to make me cry reading a book, although I definitely have cried reading books. It's even harder to make me laugh in a book. The first time, I remember it so distinctly, the first time I ever laughed out loud reading was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And I laughed multiple times, but it was in like the first 3 or 4 pages. I laughed out loud, and the reason I remember it was because I was kind of taken aback. Like, I knew that was the first time that had ever happened reading a book. Sorry to say that I have no funny or embarrassing story. I haven't had any public instances of big emotions while reading. Number 5 is why. Why do you read? For lots of reasons, but for me, it's primarily for entertainment. I when I read, I want an enriching experience. I want to get to know the people and places in that story, whether they're real or imaginary. And I like being absorbed in a story. And usually for me that happens with fiction for entertainment. But I do read I think about a quarter of my reading is nonfiction. So I read to learn as well. But primarily for me, it's entertainment and to get kind of sucked into a good story. So number 6, the last one, is how. Do you bother trying to predict where the plot is going and guess the plot twists? If so, how good are you at doing so? I don't necessarily try to predict where a book is going because I like stories to just kind of wash over me. I'm just kind of along for the ride. And also, I really enjoy surprises. So I like the shock of when an author is able to surprise me with something, although it has to be earned. But I like that feeling. So I don't necessarily try to predict where a story is going. But that might also be because I don't read a whole lot of mystery. So if I'm reading like a straight up whodunit, then like, of course, I am trying to figure out who did it and how. And how good am I at predicting? Terrible. I am terrible at it. So that's the end of this tag. I am going to tag Margaret Pennard to do this, and I am going to tag Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff, and Katya, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Weinert? Katya, I also tag you. And also, if you want to do this tag, please consider yourself tagged. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.